tonight related to PEC is the AAP summit idea that was referred to PEC earlier this year. The board has decided to bring this summit idea back to the board because since that time we have had new information arise to the extent that we now need to recruit a new superintendent. It was up to the PEC committee concluded that it would be important for the board to now weigh in on whether we wanted to revisit the idea of holding the education summit this fall, since we now have to introduce a new superintendent to the community. Obviously, this takes a lot of time to plan, so we need to bring this up now. I would say this is not, so anyway, there are several options here. Because PEC was discussing the AAP Summit, there's the option that this could replace the AAP Summit for this year because of our, the other option is that we do neither. The other option is we do both. I would say from my personal perspective, and I believe from the other members of PEC, it made sense that the Ed Summit would take precedent this year because we do have a new superintendent to introduce. So based on that, we're interested in receiving board support. If you recall, earlier this year, the board did vote against having the Ed Summit, but please let us know if you have changed your minds. So I have Karen, Janie, Megan.
So, Ryan, first, thank you for all of your hard work on this because I think you're moving this in the right direction. There were some concerns about resource constraints and timing. And so I think your suggestion of doing this in the fall of 2017 and marrying the Ed Summit to the introduction of a new superintendent for the system is an excellent idea because it we get a twofer out of it. And having an Ed Summit does not preclude having within it different strands that people could, as they participated in the Ed Summit, choose to follow through on perhaps the AAP strand or a strand on special education or a strand on behavioral health or whatever you wanted to break it up into. And so I think that's a great way of doing it. I do think that it's going to take a lot of resources. And I guess the question in this would go back to PEC is how you would accomplish it. Would you rely primarily on staff to do it, or would you be putting together a working committee from school board members that would help you craft an agenda that would work for everybody? But I think that your suggestion of moving forward with the Ed Summit and then having, perhaps alternating and going forward with having an AAP conference at a later date, not in 2017, 2018, but in a subsequent year.
Thanks, Karen. And just to answer the piece about, I forgot what else, about resources, Mr. Marty Smith has liaised with our friends at the foundation who are interested in doing something to assist with promoting the new superintendent to the community. And so they could potentially be interested in sponsoring this, which is good news for us, but obviously that has to be worked out with the foundation. Okay, Janie.
Yeah, I think doing some sort of an Ed Summit and to help introduce the new superintendent rather than doing an AAP, I think that makes more sense. They are very labor intensive and staff puts them together. We don't. Obviously, we weigh in on the kinds of things we want to see, but it is really staff that does it. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay, thanks, Megan.
Well, some of my colleagues who've served with me in the prior term know that I used to speak every year about please cancel the Ed Summit. It wasn't a huge attendance in the community, and it was a major time investment on staff's part. And I think at some point we just have to make choices of what's mission critical, what's strategic. And so I certainly support doing something to showcase our new superintendent in the fall. I guess what I would like for all of us as a board to consider is maybe not following the same formula. There's nothing that says we can't do, a morning conference where you introduce the superintendent and give the opportunity for him or her to speak about their vision for the system, and then maybe you have another guest speaker who comes to the audience, or maybe you open up for a Q&A on, again, sort of a town hall setting where people can talk. But I just want us to be mindful that in previous years when we've done these education summits, it is a massive amount of staff time. And because of our classroom size and the structure of our buildings, then the pressure becomes, well, we have to have lots of sessions in order to be able to have people to attend something and fit in somewhere. And so I really think we need to be very mindful. This is a system that, we brought in a new superintendent only 3.5 years ago, and they helped acclimate her. She got to learn the system. We brought in a lot of new leadership, and now we're going to have the learning curve all over again. And so I really, really am not so sure that I even want anything that resembles a typical AAP special services or education summit as we've done in the past. I would like something far more streamlined, and I think that would be a win-win for our community, but also for our staff. We talk about how much we care about staff and staff workload, and I can't think of anything more that's put on their plate than to turn around and create a summit like this. If the goal is to showcase our new superintendent, which I think is fantastic, but let's look at something that really does respect staff time, and especially because I think our community might actually come out more just for this showcase of the new superintendent rather than needing all the other sessions for now.
Right, and so I think just to respond to one of Karen's points, one of Megan's points, the goal tonight is just to get the sense of the board. If you want to do this, fine. It'll be up to PEC to kind of figure out the format, and then it'll be brought back to the board as we always do. And your suggestion of having a streamlined format is well taken. Anyone else weighing in on this? Yeah, Dan. Oh, sorry. Okay, wait. Let me do Tammy and then Dan.
I'll remember that. Thank you. I know. I'm going to differ from my colleague Megan, and I've been consistent on this point the whole time. I think these formats, whatever they take, whether they're the special ed conference, whether they're a general, what's new in FCPS, whether they're AAP directed, I think they are valuable to the community. I realize. What did you say then?
Because I just want to make sure everybody understands. I didn't say AAP or special services aren't valuable. I have always supported those, and they're highly attended. I was saying the education summit has not been one that we've drawn people out in large numbers. That's
okay, but I think the one that I remember Pat and I had done, there were lots of people there. Ron Ferguson. It was something that and maybe the last one didn't have the same pizzazz power, but I think I'm lumping all of those kind of conferences together. I wasn't saying you said one thing or the other. I was just saying those types of formats where we talk about what FCPS offers and we allow the parents to come. They choose to come, they choose not to come. We were proposing the AAP, but I think staff came to us, and I think also given the fact that our superintendent has left, and we're again able to offer her as part of a general set of programming, and as Ryan said, the Public Engagement Committee will be the one that kind of does the legwork to see what that format would look like in conjunction with staff, and then we can come back to the board again for a full vote. We wanted to bring that to you now as, you know, it would be in the fall of next year, and it does.
Okay, I have Dan, then Tom.
Yeah, I just wanted to offer real quick, in the earlier session, legislative briefing, you got just a snapshot. And, having been in this organization since I can remember, and some stuff I can't remember, but, the richness of the programming that we have to offer and the number of times that we do talk to parents in a very meaningful sort of way, as we work through our challenges, I don't want to forget that. I'm the first one to say we can always get better, but we have some fabulous offerings. And in terms of staff and the support that you get around this issue, I think AAP is a really important mission. I was a principal of an AAP middle school for 7 years, and those sessions were packed with parents. And I was supported by instructional services 2 times a year, and we stayed as long as people wanted to stay and have questions. So I think the conferences are well worth it. I think the engagement with parents is well worth it. And I would also say balance that against the time commitments that you have of all the important things that are out there. It's not, we're not valuing it, but we only have so much bandwidth to do. And I think the superintendent search is a really important mission right now.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Tom?
Dan, I'm going to remember that you didn't give me the pass in front of you. I'm sure next time you will, though.
I will.
Just kidding. I know Tammy is much nicer than I am, so it's understandable. So I guess I am sort of undecided on this topic a little bit. I think what Megan said resonates with me about not only the amount of effort and time it takes to staff and put on an event like this, but I'm also I'm keenly aware that I think with our projected budget challenges, kind of anything that we do that seems superfluous, that may be treated, I think really we need to think hard about it. And I'm not suggesting that that's in fact the case, just that I think, some sort of streamlined version or something I think would reflect well on us as a board as we think about if it's an optional expenditure that we're going to take on in the fall. That really, the hard scrutiny has to be given to it because it is going to be put into the balance with the types of conversations we have to have that are going to be difficult to get our budget to balance, likely.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Anyone else? Oh, Pat, sorry.
Forgot about me. Yeah, just Megan, I agree. These take a lot of time, and it's a big. And Tammy, even though that was a great one, I thought, but even so, you fill that auditorium. Even you fill the auditorium, and it's a drop in the bucket to the people in the county. Just in terms of the number of people. So, but I think as we were talking, I was thinking. I remember that when Karen Garza came in, she wanted to kind of make it her own, and maybe that's what we ought to try to do. But I want to ask about timing because. When we have our new superintendent, we have kind of a date and a location and a general idea, but then let the new superintendent sort of create the program and what way. And I think depending on when we hire this person, there would still be time. What do you think, Ryan? Is that still time to plan?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we're looking at a May-June timeframe, and then the summit being held in September, October. So there's plenty of time there
That's
to
enough time?
adjust. Yeah.
Okay. Does that sound right? I don't know, because I remember last time we were really short.
No. Yeah. They were concerned that 6 months, I don't know. I'll look back there.
But
Mr. Sloan?
you're talking about a kind of like a topic and theme adjustment, right?
Right.
And if it's a streamlined event, I don't see that being an issue.
Well, that's something
driven.
completely different than we're talking about, though. We're talking about, a streamlined event to introduce the superintendent can be what we had tonight. And that is not a summit of any proportion that provides any educational value to what the system does or can't do for people's kids. So we need to figure out if we're talking apples or oranges here, because
I think I just threw a monkey wrench in. So,
But that's
PEC
okay.
keep talking
That's
about
okay. But that's not the same thing. And if I recall, Matt, I know. Well, I don't know exactly who would be, because I know in the past I worked with Matt's predecessor to put this on. Would I still be working? Would this committee still be working with that person? Because I remember Barbara. She was nervous that she only had about 6 months, and so when you say, we're hiring in in May if everything works out, then to put something on June, July, October, 4 months, that's not a lot of time. So which staff grouping would be? Well, I just think we need for the purpose of answering this question, Dr. Presidio, let's assume that we're talking an ed conference like we used to do, just to give us a perspective of how long it took to put us on. And I also want to point out to some colleagues, when you talk about cost, Tom, the last conference was almost fully funded by an outside vendor. So there was staff cost to pay whatever. Oh, there you are. whatever staff, administrative staff needed to be there, but most of the cost was covered by, and I'm trying to remember, donors. But
Okay,
So-
can we get a response from staff?
So I came all the way up here, and I don't have a really black and white answer to this question. I think it depends on a number of different variables. It depends on the themes that we're talking about for the conference. It depends on the scope that we're talking about. I would say that the previous education summits that I remember since I've been here, you're 100% right. Those really were headed up by the communications department, but that was because it was really seen as a community engagement event. But of course, most of the sessions that were offered in those activities really came from the Instructional Services Department or the Department of Special Services. So it was really a committee of staff across multiple departments, including the technology department and others, that was really responsible for putting those on. So I think we would take the same approach. It really would be a team-based approach. And how much time we would need to plan would really depend, I think, on the scope and the scale of the event. So obviously, if we were going to do something that's going to have dozens or so sessions, we're going to need a little bit more time to plan for that. But when you have broader themes or topics, on the other hand, it's a little bit easier because you're pulling people from different places. It's not like all of that workload is falling on one department. So with that sense, I would say I think we would have enough time after a superintendent was hired. I really do. With the caveat, if I could, that we would have to work together with the board to make sure that the scope and scale was reasonable to meet everyone's needs.
Okay, thanks, Don. Anything else, Tammy, Pat? Okay, so I have Dahlia, then Karen.
So I still don't know how I feel about the actual summit happening. I think hearing some of the conversation of new superintendent versus not, I would lean more towards saying, let's get something in place and perhaps have the superintendent be the keynote or have a keynote to bring people to meet the superintendent. Hopefully we have one by then. But I would hesitate to wait that long to get started, knowing that it will involve our board and staff and PEC and so many players, just the slowdown of that. That being said, I'd be happy for PEC to give a proposal. I don't know that I'm 100% on board with this happening.
Okay, Karen, then Megan.
I was going to reiterate that we really should send it back to PEC to put together a proposal for the whole board on how to handle this. I was also going to suggest that it should not be the sole focus of the introduction of a new superintendent. I am very respectful of the important and critical role a superintendent does play in this organization, but this organization is made up of more than just the superintendent, and we provide excellent services and opportunities, and the role to profile the opportunities that we have for students across our system, and that I like your idea, Dahlia, of having a keynote by a new superintendent who can talk about where they want to take the organization. But Fairfax County Public Schools is a preeminent education experience for all students, and that's really what I would want to see. Because the other thing is that our student body changes over time. And so several years ago when we had an education summit, there's a different set of constituents who participate in it. But as families grow up and move on, we have a whole nother set of constituents that need to know about our opportunities. And I would also urge that when PEC looks at this, that they look at it as a almost a two-part process, not only what we would do on a given day, but use technology to make the event more durable. So for example, someone can, we could live stream it, but we could also have a video library, so when people want to know about a given subject, they can actually go online and see what was done at the summit.
Okay, great. Megan, and I'll give her the last word, and then we'll make some decisions.
So I'm fine with this going back to PEC. I think this was very helpful tonight that we did have the full board start to talk about what this might look like. And I guess I would just ask PEC to really try and engage staff in this dialogue about what something like this requires on the part of staff. I know the McLaughlin family is not the only one in this county that is really stretched thin. And I really recognize and appreciate how often my colleagues talk about employee workload. But as desirable as something like this is, in light of what this system's been going to be going through the budget, through the superintendent and everything else, I just hope everybody's going to be really mindful. And I guess Dr. Lockhart, since you're serving as interim, I hope you'll play the voice until the new superintendent comes in and represent your staff and how they're feeling. And that I'm very proud of this school system for the AAP summits, the special services summits. And yes, I loved Ron Ferguson, the education summit. But I am really trying for us to be strategic in what we draw upon staff time. And I want staff refreshed, passionate, and full of joy in the jobs they do each and every day. And these things take a toll, and especially in the busy year we are with the budget and the superintendent search. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, great. So what I'm going to put before the board is that the board refers the idea of an Ed Summit featuring the new superintendent back to PEC to provide the board with further guidance and suggestions on an eventual summit. And this would put the AEP summit on hold until 2018 for further discussion. Okay, anyone, can I see a show of hands to support that? Okay, that's everyone. Okay, we have one other item tonight, which is listed as school board communication needs and resources. So the reason this is coming to the board is that the prior superintendent had suggested that a position be added in the Department of Matt's shop to support the communication needs of the school board. Peck felt it was not in the position to decide that, as it would be putting the cart before the horse. We felt we needed to understand the board members' true needs on communication. And as such, we decided to create a brief survey for board members to take about their communications needs. So you will find on board docs, can we pull that up? Okay, thanks. a 4-question, broad open answer survey about board members' needs in the realm of communications. Karen Corbett Sanders worked with me to craft some questions along with Eileen. These are the 4 questions. I believe they are very, as I said, open-ended. We are looking for responses from as many board members as would like to reply. Once board members send those questions in to me and Eileen, they will then be compiled and presented at PEC for further discussion with staff so that we can direct resources as the board desires. So what I'm looking for is just an understanding that the board members are being asked to fill out this survey and are comfortable with it going back to PEC. Yes, Megan.
So I appreciate the survey and look forward to participating, but I do want to share with my colleagues a conversation I had with Sandy Evans as our chair, along with Dr. Lockhart and Dr. Ramey. I had gone to Dr. Garza this past spring, and I said that it concerns me that you have 12 elected officials and we don't have a single person to ensure that we, have basic communication support, including, at times time-sensitive talking points when there are events going on in the system, that board members are invited and able to have visibility so the community knows we're engaged and care, and that in the short term, it wasn't about trying to add staff to the school board office because we know we have the budget challenges, but that even if there was a person within the communications department that was just designated as like our point person that Eileen could go to, or a board member could go to and say, hey, I've got a question and my executive assistant and I both need some help with this to figure this out. I don't think that's unreasonable. I think it's still concerning to me 5 years on the board that we don't have a single communications person that feels dedicated to serving 12 elected officials. So Dr. Garza had said that she didn't see it being problematic, that somebody in Matt's shop, where appropriate, could just be that liaison, that point person. And then Sandy shared with me that some board members got upset with that arrangement because they felt maybe we should have our own person in our own office. And so I guess what I wanted to share with everybody is the survey's good, and how PEC helps us move along on anything we would do in a long-term basis. I'm fully supportive, but I still think that we would benefit if this board at least communicated, is it reasonable to just have one person in Matt's shop to feel like part of their role is manageable in their workload, but that they can be the point person in the school board office? Because I know that Matt and his shop have a lot on their plate, but at some point we have to be able to rely on going to someone who isn't overwhelmed, or it's tag you're it. I think it makes sense to be a consistent person out of communications that it doesn't, that it seems appropriate for them to be a point person for us and the board members. And so I'm just disappointed because I felt like Dr. Garza understood that. She recognized the value of just having that person designated, and then suddenly we're back to square one again, and I can't for the life of me figure out why we think this is a good way for 12 elected officials.
And just so you know, although she's not here, Sandy was the one that referred it to PEC, so that's why it's good. Ilya.
Just a question to Mrs. McLaughlin, because she's talking in an abstract. It's difficult for me to get a grasp at what she's trying to get, because those few instances where I have questions, I just go to Matt, and he's the boss of that shop, communication shop, and ask him questions. But so I'm just asking Mrs. McLaughlin, are you seeking someone from Matt's shop on a consistent basis to be able to help you be able to communicate with your constituents? And is that so? If for example, if you could give me a concrete example, that would be helpful for me to think through.
You know, I can't necessarily go right now, this minute in the last year of where the concrete examples were, because honestly, we have so much that happens to us in any given year. What I do remember specifically is there was a time when the board needed some talking points, and we were waiting for the board to be able to get the talking points. They were coming through to the superintendent, but we weren't getting them. And so, you know, Mr. Moon, to your point, I'm not talking about just myself. I'm talking about the fact that if it's anything from, you know, the opening school day, yes, we do have Matt letting us know where the press might be, but, you know, I know that we had colleagues who, you know, get to schools and the principals are, you know, not even thinking about the fact they have board members there in the building and incorporating them as part of the activities. And, you know, I know you've served and are well known by our principals, but not everybody is as well known by their principals. And so it's just simply a matter of, on any given day, I think there's going to be a board member who, whether it's not just the newsletter issue, but it might be other issues related to communications. I have sent emails to communication, and I think it's typically when Matt has a lot on his plate because he's trying to serve the superintendent. And so this doesn't need to be complicated. It's simply, if you've got a dozen to 20 people in that shop, it's not hard to just say have one person who, Eileen as the clerk of the board, our EAAs, the 6 of them, just feel comfortable knowing they can go to somebody and say, if it has something to do with board members' needs related to communication, here's your go-to person. That's it.
And so I'd like to weigh in if I could. So we would like to have that line of communication be from the clerk to Matt in terms of the board needs. We feel that we can support board needs around major communications. Whenever we find out that there are lots of different comments coming across in client communications, when we get that information, we can provide talking points for the board and share that with you. So we would like to have that relationship and certainly would welcome that work coming from the clerk through to Matt. With regard to the number of individuals who are in the communications office, yes, we did just do a reorganization, and so we have many more individuals who are focused on design work and on production. When you look at the individuals who are really working with communications, we're looking at 6 or 7 individuals who are looking at written communications. And when we look at the work that Matt does, yes, he does support the work of the superintendent's office, but he's really supporting communications for the entire division, trying to get the message out across the entire division. So he's not merely just working on information that's in the superintendent's office, but we certainly do want to work with the board. We want to support the board as best we can. We feel that we can do that with working with the current EAA structure that is there. I know that I had some conversations with Sandy about that. And so we'd like to find out what your needs are through the survey and then be able to work through the clerk to support you as best we can.
Okay, Mr. Moon, are you done?
I'm done.
Okay, Tammy, then Janie.
I think Marty shared with what I want to share with. Mr. Moon, I've had my own frustrations. I can talk to you offline about times there were events that I wasn't notified with, or there were things in schools that I didn't know about. And also, my one particular example that I can share, and it's been a continual, you know how extraordinary, our EAAs are. And, but for them to try to figure out what of my 32 schools that I represent, what's going on in each one of them, how can I understand that? How can I promote that? Those types of things are very, very difficult when you share half a person with somebody. And so that part, that kind of part of written, like if you want to write communication newsletters and want to be timely and want to do it more often. And I think the way we operate with such an intense, heavy workload, it's very difficult for us to try to do that. So that's one area. If I was answering this survey, I just wanted to provide that for you, Mr. Moon, where I would need additional help. And there's other areas that I'll fill in. But I think Marty expressed it well, going, there's a real, because there was some frustrations communicated via PEC by other board members and by members on PEC. Staff is working very hard to try to facilitate changes. And but in order for them to understand how to best serve us, we need to answer these questions. So I would just encourage everybody to do that so we can move forward and get to where we need to be. I think, Ms. McLaughlin, as you spoke, you said about there was this new position. Well, I think some of us on PEC were kind of like, we didn't really understand that there was going to be a new position, nor did we understand the duties of that. And so that's where we and then there were some things that happened. And so we're regrouping at this point. I think we're definitely moving in the right direction. So just please, board members and Ryan, if you'll notify everybody via email, I think that would be good for all of those people who aren't here tonight, because I think this is there's only 12 of us, so I would love to see, as a member of PEC, 100% participation. So,
Okay, thanks, Tammy. Janie?
Thank you for the survey. I think that's important. And I would imagine there are varying needs among members as to how much support you need or you don't need or what have you. And that's just the way it is. I think that if there is to be a position, I think it would be better that it is in math shop. That's where the tools are, and that's where a tremendous amount of information is coming and going all the time. And so I wouldn't want to see this person to be isolated in the school board office. I think it'd be a waste of tremendous thought and tools that already exist in our communications office. So I know that what Dr. Garza had suggested before, as I understand it, was a position that would be there in communications, and I suspect it'd have to be a new position.
Yes, we're talking a new FTE.
Yeah,
and I don't know if we're at that point yet where we could identify the resources for a new FTE.
Right, I know.
So in the absence of that, and identifying what those board needs might be, working with current staff in both communications office and in the school board office to see how we can best meet the school board members' individual needs.
Right. So anyway, if we have increased staff support, having the person live in the communications office, but who part of their job description is also to meet the needs of individual board members who need it, and I do understand that this would be an additional resource, and we would have to allocate funds for it. So, thanks.
Okay, thanks. We have two left on the list, and then we'll make we'll move on. Karen and then Megan.
Great, thank you. As Ryan mentioned, I helped him put together the survey because I had suggested it as being a way of doing requirements definition. What are the real needs of the school board in the communications area? And are they actual real needs which require a full-time equivalent, or is it just a change in mindset of how we do things? Because sometimes we have a penchant to jump to, we need additional resources versus looking at the processes of how we do things and can we do things better with the resources we have, and is it just a different way of looking at things, a different mindset? And so I think that's where some of the questions came from. I would also urge that I don't feel comfortable with the concept of everything funneling through the clerk's office unless we do have a serious mindset adjustment, because remember, we were supposed to funnel things through the clerk's office when we did our website design, and for some reason something happened in that requirements definition, and many of us didn't have the opportunity to have real and meaningful input into that process. And so I would just suggest that, similar to my colleague, Ms. Staranak Kofax, that please, everybody take this seriously. I know that in speaking to you, Marty, and in speaking to Matt, you all want valuable feedback. This will provide some of that. It was a question format versus a binary format, so that people would use it as an open-ended discussion and put a lot of information in there. And so please take the opportunity. People want to hear from you.
Okay, Megan with the last word.
So I appreciate how Ms. Strauss tried to capture it, because sometimes I feel like we are at risk of the telephone game. So just to clarify, at no point did I ask for, nor did Dr. Garza concede, that suddenly we would be creating a full-time staff member in communications to serve the board. What I said was we needed a mindset that recognized that when board members were asking for help, that we wouldn't get the message that the communications department serves the school system, because the school board is part of the school system. And I know it benefits the school system that if the board has support in communications that is reflective of the superintendent and or the leadership team's mindset on any given issue, we have a better chance of all being in sync. So I think it's beneficial to the system that board members who are going to speak and communicate, that there is kind of a shared cohesive message. So that's a piece of it. I would still go to the fact that it was just simply to say someone in that office is going to be the point person. And to Ms. Corbett-Sanders' point, I think it's fine that in the short term, if we need something, we go to Eileen, then she goes to Matt, but it becomes a little problematic on how many people do you have in there, because by the time I've asked for something, it goes through the clerk, it goes to Matt goes to whoever his people are who are going to maybe provide the help, then it comes back to Eileen, then to me. This is certainly not, in my mind, very focused that Mr. Smith, no, I'm not asking for a full-time position to be dedicated to the school board at all. And I really appreciate, Ms. Corbett-Sanders, you said it best. What are the resources we have? What's reasonable? If it's not reasonable, if Mr. Guilfoyle's saying, I only have 6 or 7 people to help with written communication, all the other people are doing development and design or whatever, well then maybe we need to be looking at what is the purpose of communications and community outreach. What kind of work are they doing? Because in my mind, written communication is probably one of the most important things we do as a system, and that includes making sure school board members communicate accurately outwardly, but also we get communication to us to be engaged with the community. So,
and I'm confident that once we find out what your needs are, that we can put structures in place to support you. The first step is finding out what those unique needs are. I know that we already have some structures that I think that we can use to support your newsletters, and those are electronic resources that we currently push out across the system, where I think that if we have conversations with your EAAs on how we currently do that, some portfolios of news needs that you might want or need for your newsletter. So those are things that we can currently do, but when we find out what your needs are, we'll be able to see what kinds of resources we can really put to those needs.
Okay, thanks. Pat insisted on having the last word.
Oh, sorry, I haven't said anything. I just want to make sure that we're not assuming things about the communications department, and they're not at the table here kind of to say that our assumptions are wrong.
So I'm here on behalf of my communications department.
All right, so this is something that I worry about when we're talking about workload, right? Is it's easy for us at this table who don't really know what work is involved, right? To say it's just about mindset, or it's just about, it kind of reminds me as a teacher, like, well, you can get a lot more done if you just work differently, right? And from people who don't know the job, right? So, and I know that's no one's intent, But what I see happening in this, this building is everybody's working really hard
Yeah, I
to
see
do what
staff
they're doing.
working
Right.
very hard every day across the entire school system. And Matt's office, since I work very closely, working very hard to support the school system.
Right. So I just want to make sure that we as board members have an open mind to the idea that we may, at the end of this survey, have to accept that we are asking for more staff. That we can't necessarily, just take someone who's already working a 60-hour week and add something to their plate, right? So, I mean, it is possible that when we get the survey results that we will have to add staff, right?
It is possible. Once we find out what those needs are, that is highly possible.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so with that, board members, please fill out the survey, and we will address it at our next PEC meeting. And finally, I was remiss in forgetting Elizabeth's birthday. I was in China at the time, so I did bring a tart for her. She is not here, so if anyone will see her in the next couple of days, please take it to her. I will be out of town.